The wall or the steel barrier, they can have any name they want.
President Trump at the U.S. southern border to make another pitch for border security. The Pennsylvania grand jury report about clergy sexual abuse released last year coming under fire. Why one journalist says many people didn't get the full picture.
Brooklyn's very first medical marijuana dispensary opened in Park Slope. I'm Emily Druby, and coming up, we speak with experts about what this new accessibility means.
Plus, a distraught mother who lost her daughter to the flu is making a desperate plea to other parents. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. President Trump took his push for the border wall to Texas today. The president says if he can't reach a deal with Democrats, he's prepared to declare a national emergency to get the funding needed to start construction. Camila Bernal has the latest on that story.
President Trump visiting the U.S.-Mexico border Thursday, ground zero in the border wall battle at the crux of the government shutdown.
Border security, the wall or the steel barrier, they can have any name they want, but we have to have it, and it's going to happen.
On the agenda, an immigration roundtable, a visit to the U.S. Border Patrol Station, a border security briefing, and a trip to the Rio Grande River.
We have to give these incredible people the tools to work with. We're not doing that.
Back in Washington, the government shutdown reaches day 20, nearing the longest in U.S. history. Some 800,000 federal employees remain without a paycheck, while talks over possible compromise appear at a standstill.
The president doesn't believe in governance, so he doesn't care if governance doesn't take place.
The president is simply not budging.
The president threatening to use executive authority if negotiations continue to stall.
I have the absolute right to declare a national emergency. If this doesn't work out, probably I will do it. I would almost say definitely.
Declaring a national emergency would allow Trump to use federal funds to build a border wall without approval from Congress, but would likely be met with immediate legal challenges. In Hidalgo, Texas, I'm Camila Bernal.
Catholic leaders around the world are responding to Trump's handling of the border crisis. The Religious Sisters of Mercy released a statement saying, quote, "Make no mistake, there is a humanitarian crisis on the border, one where asylum seekers are forced to wait in dangerous and unhealthy conditions." And the chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Committee on Migration said, quote, "Secure borders and humane treatment of those fleeing persecution and seeking a better life are not mutually exclusive. The United States can ensure both and must do so without instilling fear." Sister Norma Pimentel is one of the nation's most active Catholic leaders along the border. She met with President Trump today in McAllen, Texas. In a recent op-ed for the Washington Post, while she did not specifically weigh in on the border wall debate, Sister Norma encouraged a response to migrants and refugees guided by human dignity. Infectious diseases like tuberculosis and the flu have been rampant at the southern border. Most of those in need of care are children, and a staggering 28% of them are under the age of 5. The data was released after a full review of all the kids in custody of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. In just a few minutes, Chief of Infectious Diseases at NYU Langone Hospital in Brooklyn, Dr. Jeannie Carey, will join us to tell us more about what we can expect this flu season. The Pennsylvania grand jury report that details sexual abuse cases involving clergy dating back decades is coming under fire tonight. A new article claims many media outlets fail to properly report the full story. National correspondent for Crux and the Tablet, Christopher White, has those details.
Dozens of witnesses testified before the grand jury, detailing acts of sexual abuse by priests.
Those findings from the Pennsylvania Attorney General rocked the Catholic Church in the United States last August. Now, a veteran religion reporter, Peter Steinfels, is calling the investigation inaccurate and unjust. Steinfels published an in-depth article questioning both the methodology and the motivation of the grand jury report.
The abuse scarred every diocese. The cover-up was sophisticated.
The report chronicled 7 decades of abuse within the state's 6 Catholic dioceses and led to the resignation of one of the nation's top Catholic cardinals, Cardinal Donald Wuerl. While Steinfels laments the, quote, stomach-churning accounts of abuse chronicled in the 1,300-page report, he is critical of the structure in which it is presented. He He describes the sensational descriptions used in the report's introduction, which shaped the media narrative of its release, and the lack of the church's response to these cases. He continues saying, quote, "There are no efforts to discern statistical patterns in the ages of abusers, the rates of abuse over time, the actions of law enforcement, or changes in responses by church officials. Nor are there comparisons to other institutions. One naturally wonders what a 70 to 80-year scrutiny of sex abuse in public schools or juvenile penal facilities would find." In the end, Steinfeld maintains that the Dallas Charter that the U.S. Church's 2002 guidelines on child protection has worked. While he says they are in need of an update, he says the U.S. bishops have done their job. Liz?
Christopher, tell us about Steinfeld. Tell us more about him. What are his credentials, and why did he even decide to write this piece?
Liz, Peter Steinfeld is, in some respects, the dean of U.S. Catholic religion journalists. He was a 10-year reporter at the New York Times, managing editor at Commonweal for a long time, and then the head of Fordham Center for Religion and Culture. In writing this report, I think what he brings to light consistently in his 11,000-word article is that, strictly speaking, the standards that the Pennsylvania grand jury report used just aren't up to snuff, but either in terms of methodology, and they raise suspicions about the motivations themselves that perhaps hint at a political sort of desire for the prosecutor here.
He also has a very strong criticism of the idea of an investigative report. Where does that stem from?
Yeah, what he does is he goes back and looks at sort of legal scholarship on grand juries, and he says an investigative report actually, while there's standard practice, and we have them in many venues in public life, they don't give those named in it a chance to respond. And with a report with the ramifications as large and critical as this, it's really unfair to list so many people without giving them a chance to respond.
Christopher, give us some perspective here. How might this article shape the U.S. Church's ongoing response to the clergy sex abuse crisis?
Yeah, I think one line that he has in the report is that the church that is chronicled in the sex abuse report isn't the church of today, which is why so many bishops have said we have the guidelines in place for dealing with minor abuse, so now we need to pivot to what are the protocols for bishops and for dealing with cover-up. So it's a new conversation that's being had.
All right, Christopher, thank you very much for that report. Medical marijuana dispensaries are a growing trend across the U.S., and now that trend is coming to Brooklyn. While many experts say the drug will help treat various illnesses, other experts, including clergy, are issuing words of warning. Currents News' Emily Drewby has details from Park Slope.
Liz, on Flatbush Avenue, just across the street from the Barclays Center, is the borough's very first medical marijuana dispensary. Sativa Medical sells cannabis oil, which can be used in things like vaporizer pens and capsules. Employee Colleen Hughes, who is also a patient, says medical marijuana has helped her manage pain she was treating with opioids.
Medical cannabis can actually help people bridge the gap between being bedridden and actually getting up and being able to wash your hands or do menial tasks.
But not everyone agrees. For years, Monsignor Joseph Nugent has worked to help recovering addicts. He says pot is a gateway drug.
It's ridiculous that you're using a substance that causes disease, addiction, to ease the pain of other disease. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Bishop of Brooklyn Nicholas DiMarzio agrees. In an interview with Currents News last June, he talked about the dangers of pot, but he did mention a potential benefit.
It's a gateway drug, leads to further drug abuse. That's notwithstanding the medical benefits where, people are on the chemotherapy or something, very strictly regulated. It can be helpful to them.
Dr. Blanca Vasquez says CBD, a component of the plant, has changed the way epilepsy is treated, but patients using medical marijuana should remain under the care of their doctor.
They should have a great partnership with the doctor. It really is something that your doctor should be clear. What are the indications for the medical marijuana use? Because a lot of these products are not FDA approved.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from an addiction, Monsignor Nugent suggests reaching out to your local Catholic charities for a referral, or you can reach out to his parish of St. Paul and St. Agnes. In Park Slope, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
Also in the news, Michael Cohen is headed to court. The president's former lawyer has agreed to testify before Congress in February, a major first move from House Democrats investigating the president. Cohen was implicated in a scheme to pay hush money to two women claiming to have had affairs with the president. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio delivered his 6th annual State of the City address on Thursday. He did it to a packed Upper West Side theater where Cardinal Timothy Dolan was in the audience. De Blasio announcing initiatives to create a retirement fund for workers who lack access to employer-sponsored funds, as well as a new office to protect tenants. The mayor also said the city will expand preschool for 3-year-olds and provide free glasses to any kindergartner and first grader who needs them.
Of our work together, tens of thousands of tenants now have their own lawyers paid for by the city who stop illegal evictions. Thank you to the members of the council. Thank you, Speaker. The New York City Housing Authority has a plan to bring brand new everything to 175,000 NYCHA residents, from new roofs to new kitchens and bathrooms. Now, last year, I pledged that we would not only be the safest big city in America, but we'd also strive to be the fairest big city in America. And that's why in 2018, we built and protected more affordable apartments than ever. My friends, life in the fairest big city in America should never feel impossible.
In the middle of his State of the City, de Blasio signed an executive order to create the Office to Protect Tenants. Catholic funeral services for the latest New York City firefighter to die in the line of duty continue tonight in Marine Park, Brooklyn. Stephen Pollard, who had only been on his dream job for a year and a half, is being hailed a hero after responding to a car crash on the Belt Parkway's Mill Basin Bridge and falling to his death on Sunday night. Thousands of people are expected to join family and friends to say their final goodbyes tonight at Marine Park Funeral Home from 7 to 9 p.m. His funeral mass will be held tomorrow at Good Shepherd Church in Marine Park at 11:30 a.m. There's a lot more news headed your way.
Two sisters from Queens will return to their homeland when they join thousands of other Catholics and Pope Francis in Panama for World Youth Day. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
And why one woman is urging everyone to get the flu shot as soon as possible. We'll also talk to the chief of infectious diseases at NYU Langone about what to expect this flu season and why she says getting the vaccine is important. And did you know you can contact our news desk with story ideas, tips, and comments? Email us at tips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour hotline. That number is 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. The kickoff to World Youth Day in Panama is less than 2 weeks away. Thousands of young Catholics will join Pope Francis to strengthen the future of the church. Currents News' Tim Harfman will travel with a delegation from the Brooklyn Diocese, and he joins us now with a special preview. Tim.
Liz, Aurelia and Yamitzla are two sisters from Queens. They're looking forward to returning to their homeland to pray with the Holy Father and other young Catholics. But that's not the only reason why.
It's called Central America. Say Central America.
Central America.
Second graders at St. Joachim Ann School in Queens Village learning about their teacher's homeland.
And that's Panama City right here.
Aurelia Reed Thomas was born in Panama and came to the United States when she was 8 years old. Now she'll join thousands of young Catholics and Pope Francis at World Youth Day.
It was a perfect opportunity to do both, to also pray with the Pope, but at the same time to be able to see my country again.
She's traveling with her younger sister Yamitzla. They're prayers at St. Gerard Majella Church in Hollis, Queens.
Panama.
The sisters were in Poland in 2016 when Pope Francis announced Panama would be the next host. This will be their third World Youth Day, but this trip is extra special.
My mother passed away about 2 years ago, and that was the last thing that she wanted to do, is to go to Panama. And so my sister and I going there is like us representing her.
But funding the trip hasn't been easy for Yamitzla. She says although her sister is helping out and her church offered funding, she wanted to pay her own way, working double shifts at her job.
There's other people in the church that want to go, who want to go to World Youth Days and go to other events around the church that the church can help them with, so I didn't want to be selfish.
Now with World Youth Day just days away, these sisters are ready for the journey.
Going there and being a part of World Youth Day and like getting to express my faith and be with other people that did, it was actually pretty amazing.
Aurelia and Yamitzla will join nearly 200 other pilgrims from Brooklyn and Queens. The delegation is usually one of the largest groups to attend World Youth Day. Liz?
All right, Tim, thank you so much for that report. Currents News will provide coverage of World Youth Day live from Panama later this month. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, Crux Rome Bureau Chief Inez San Martin, who will be traveling with the Pope, and Currents News' Tim Harfman will be on the ground. Coverage begins January 24th at 9:45 a.m. A former monastery in Tucson, Arizona is serving a new purpose. The Benedictine monastery will soon serve as a shelter for Central American migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. The monastery, which was once home to Southern Arizona nuns, can house about 30 people. A nonprofit Catholic Community Services will run all shelter operations. Peak flu season is upon us, and one mom wants people to listen. She lost her young daughter to the disease, and she says a simple vaccination may have saved her life. Taite Vic April Khan has that report.
This time of year is about looking back for mom Rebecca Hendricks.
She was a singer and a dancer and a little diva.
Pictures of her 5-year-old daughter Scarlett are displayed all over the house.
I was kind of hearing a little bit about flu on the news and stuff, and I didn't really pay attention to it.
4 years ago, Hendricks got a call to come pick up Scarlett from school.
She had a pretty high fever. It was 103. Brought her home and gave her some Tylenol and stuck her on the couch, with some tea and put a movie on.
The next day, they went about errands like normal.
It's amazing how strong kids can be or present themselves to be.
Scarlett's fever seemed to taper with more medicine, but after a nap on the couch,
she fell asleep like really fast, and she started making this really strange breathing noise. She just kind of opened her eyes, but she looked past me, like through me. And I was terrified, and I just said, whoa, I have to take you to the hospital.
Within hours of arriving at the hospital,
when I walked in there, I thought that I was going to walk out with some medicine. I had no idea that I was going to walk home without her. She, in fact, died from respiratory failure caused by the H3N2 flu.
Dr. John Lynch says about 1 in 3 people get the flu vaccine, and it's not too late to get your flu shot with our peak season just around the corner.
It takes about 2 weeks for the vaccine to kick in, provide some protection, and we're still early in the season, but we're probably looking at a peak in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
He says older adults and children who have severe symptoms like a high fever should be brought into the hospital, something Hendricks says don't ignore.
Don't worry about being overreactive, because, you're talking about life and death.
Most flu activity peaks between December and February. An estimated 80,000 people died last year because of the viral infection. So what can we expect this year? Chief of Infectious Diseases at NYU Langone Hospital, Brooklyn, Dr. Jeannie Carey is here to tell us more. Jeannie, thank you so much for being with us, especially now. This is such an important topic. Now, as we just saw in that piece, this mom urging people to get the flu shot. On the other side of that, you have some people say it's not effective at all. How important is it to get this vaccine?
Extremely important, Liz. It's the most important thing that anyone can do to protect not only themselves from getting the flu, but also everyone around them.
Full disclosure here, a lot of people are afraid to get the vaccine, including me. We've talked about that. What would you say to them? What do you say to me?
I think the most common misconception is that you can get the flu from the vaccine.
That's what I've heard.
That is impossible.
Okay.
You cannot get the flu from the vaccine.
And why is that?
That's because the vaccine is made from inactivated, killed particles of flu, and it's not an active virus. So what that vaccine does is when it's injected into your body in the form of the vaccine, it trains your immune system to recognize the flu without giving you the flu. So it's sort of a practice run for your immune system. Then should you be exposed to the actual flu infection, your immune system knows how to fight it off.
But Jeannie, how about people that actually really believe that the vaccine doesn't even work?
Well, the vaccine does not work 100%. The vaccine is, in a given year, probably about maybe 60% effective. But if you're talking about protecting yourself from a potentially fatal illness, 60% protection is so much better than no protection, which if you don't get the vaccine, that's no protection. If you do get the vaccine, not only do you have a very good chance of protection, but even if the vaccine doesn't work 100% and you do get the flu that year, you will get a less severe case of the flu most likely, so you will be less sick and less contagious to others.
Tens of thousands of people died last year. What are the expectations for this flu season?
We're seeing it pick up. It started off a little slow. We're seeing more and more cases now. We've already had some deaths from the flu. I think it's most important for people to remember that the flu is not just a bad cold that's going to put you out of work for a couple days. The flu can be a fatal illness. If you infect, you know, an individual over the age of 65 or a young baby, that's who dies from the flu. Small children, older adults, anyone can, but those are the most susceptible individuals.
And really quickly, Jeannie, this last question, besides the vaccine, which is so important, quick tips on how to prevent from getting sick.
Wash your hands. Wash your hands because you can pick up the flu from someone, and so wash your hands. If someone is coughing or sneezing, stay more than 3 feet away from them because the virus particles of the flu travel on respiratory secretions. So your saliva and mucus, if you're coughing, sneezing, it travels about 3 feet.
Wow.
So if someone is coughing and sneezing, do try to stay more than 3 feet away from that person.
Nothing personal. I just don't want to get sick.
I don't blame you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Chief of Infectious Diseases at NYU Langone Hospital, Brooklyn, Dr. Jeannie Carey. Thank you. Very important advice there. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz.
Still to come on Currents News, a major brand is recalling over 1 million vehicles over their airbag inflators. And the story of a highway patrol officer who wasn't expecting his day to take such a different turn. We'll be right back. If you drive a Toyota, some important news for you. More than 1 million vehicles are being recalled over airbag concerns. The model years affected include 2010 to 2016. Some Lexus models are also being recalled from model years 2010 through 2017. Toyota and Lexus dealers are sending out notices and will replace the faulty equipment. A California Highway Patrol officer had to bust out his medical equipment on the side of the road Monday when an SUV carrying an expectant mother pulled up behind him. Officer Jeff Lloyd called for backup, but the baby did not want to wait.
It's one of those things that you're like, I don't know if I'll ever have to use this, and luckily, I guess some common sense and just smart thinking came in.
Mother and baby girl were taken to the hospital and are both doing well. When it's time, it's time. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublis. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.